He thought he was just helping a frightened fugitive when he opened the cellar door, but the moment he saw the Apache scout trembling from cold and exhaustion, something in the young man's eyes made his chest tighten, as if he were standing before someone the whole world had already forgotten. But when the Apache pulled an ancient object from his pocket and whispered a name the man hadn't heard since childhood, he froze. And at that exact moment, mysterious lights exploded across the mountains, making everyone on the ranch hold their breath, unable to understand what was about to happen. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and comment where in the world you're watching from, because now I'm going to tell you everything. The cold was a sharp thing. It bit through Ben Miller's jacket as he walked from the house to the barn. The sky was black with a million stars. The only sound was the crunch of his boots on the hard dirt. Inside the barn, the air was still and a little warmer. Ben checked on his old mare, Daisy. He patted her neck. "Cold one, girl," he said, his voice rough from not using it much. He was filling her water bucket when he heard it. A scrape, like a boot against wood, then a quick, quiet gasp. Ben froze. His hand moved slowly to the heavy flashlight on the shelf. He turned it on, the bright beam cutting through the dark. "Who's there?" he called out. "I got a gun." He did not have a gun. There was no answer. Ben moved the light along the wall of hay bales. In the far corner, behind the old tractor tire, the light found a shape, a person, curled tight, trying to be small. Ben stepped closer, his heart pounding slow and heavy in his chest. It was a young man. He was shivering. His clothes were dirty. His eyes were wide and scared, looking up at the light. "Don't," the young man whispered. "Please." "You're on my land," Ben said. His words were flat. "You're in my barn." "I am sorry. I was cold. I saw the barn. I just needed out of the wind." The young man's words tumbled out. He tried to stand, but he winced and held his side. He was Apache, Ben could see. He was just a kid. Ben kept the light on him. He saw no weapon, only fear. He thought about his warm, empty house. He thought about calling the sheriff. That was the smart thing. But the boy looked half frozen. "What's your name?" Ben asked. "Chato." "You hurt, Chato?" "A little, from running. I am okay." Ben was quiet for a long moment. He thought of his wife, Sarah. She would have brought this boy inside in a second. She was like that. Ben was not. But he was not the type to leave a creature out in the cold either. "Follow me," Ben said, his voice low, "and be quiet." He led Chato out of the barn, across the yard, to an old wooden door set into a small hill. It was the root cellar from a long time ago. Ben pulled the door open. It was dark and smelled of earth inside. "In there, it's out of the wind. I'll get you a blanket and some water." Chato looked at the dark hole, then at Ben. "Thank you," he said, and the words seemed to carry more weight than they should. "Don't thank me yet," Ben said. "Just get in." A few minutes later, Ben came back with a blanket, a canteen of water, and a piece of cornbread wrapped in a cloth. Chato was sitting just inside the cellar door. Ben handed the things to him. "You eat, you rest. At first light, you move on. Understood?" "Understood," Chato said. He took the things with careful hands. He looked up at Ben. "You are a good man." Ben shook his head, uncomfortable. "I'm a tired man." He started to turn away. "Mister," Chato said softly. Ben stopped. Chato reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small stone. It was smooth and dark, about the size of a chicken egg. It looked ordinary, but Chato held it like it was something precious. He looked scared again. "This is why I am running," Chato said. He looked from the stone to the night sky. He whispered a word to it, a word Ben could barely hear. It sounded like Moga Yon. Ben's whole body went still. The air felt thinner. "What did you say?" Ben asked, his voice a dry croak. "It is a name, for protection," Chato said. "My grandmother told me, you say it to the stone. It asks the old ones for help." Ben knew that name. He knew it from stories his grandfather told by the fireplace, stories Ben had not thought about in 30 years. Stories of lost mountains, spirits in the rocks, and a word you never, ever said out loud. Before Ben could speak, the night changed. The sky above the Red Rock Mountains began to glow, not with dawn. It was a deep, silent green. Then strands of brilliant blue light, like silent lightning, zipped across the blackness. They moved in sharp angles, not like planes or stars. They swirled and danced, painting the ranch in strange, shifting colors. Ben stood, his mouth open, looking up. Chato scrambled to his feet beside him, clutching his stone. From the small house down the dirt road, Ben's ranch hand Miguel yelled out, "Ben, you see this?" Across the way, the porch light of his neighbor, Mrs. Gable, flipped on. The old woman stood there in her robe, her face tilted to the sky, one hand over her mouth. The lights pulsed, a silent show that felt too big and too close. Then, as suddenly as they came, they were gone. The sky was just black and stars again. The silence they left behind was louder than any noise. Ben turned to look at Chato. The young man's face was pale in the starlight. "What was that?" Ben asked, but he was afraid he already knew. Chato looked at the stone in his hand, then back at the empty sky. His voice was full of a fear deeper than the cold. "I think," Chato whispered, "that was the answer." The morning sun did not warm the night from Ben's bones. He drank his coffee, standing at the kitchen window. His hands were steady, but his mind was not. He kept seeing the green and blue lights, silent and wrong. He kept hearing that name, Mongolian *. His ranch hand, Miguel, found him there. Miguel's face was serious. "Ben," Miguel said, "those lights last night. My cousin in the village saw them too. Everyone is talking. They are saying it was military tests." "Maybe it was," Ben said, but the words felt empty. "Was it the boy?" Miguel asked, his voice lower. "The one I saw you with by the cellar?" Ben met his eyes. Miguel was a good man. He had worked the ranch for 10 years. "He was just cold. He's gone now." Miguel nodded slowly. He did not believe it. "Okay, Ben, just be careful. The sky does not do that for no reason." An hour later, the black SUV came up the dirt drive. It moved slowly, like it was studying the land. It stopped in front of the house. A man got out. He wore a dark suit. He looked at the house, the barn, the mountains behind it. He did not smile. Ben walked out onto the porch. The man approached, holding up a badge and a leather wallet. "Mr. Miller, I'm Agent Dale, federal government. Can I have a few minutes of your time?" "About what?" Ben asked, his voice flat. "About an unusual aerial event last night, around 11 o'clock. We have reports of lights over this valley." Ben leaned against a porch post. He crossed his arms. "I was in bed by 9. Agent Dale's eyes were very still. They took in Ben's face, his hands, the quiet ranch. "Is that so? You didn't see anything? No unusual lights? No sounds?" "No," Ben said. "We also have a report of a possible trespasser in this area, a young man. Have you seen anyone on your property who shouldn't be here?" Ben looked past Agent Dale at the dry fields. "This is a big piece of land. People don't come here." "I see," Agent Dale said. He did not look like he believed it. He took a small step closer. His voice was calm, like he was discussing the weather. "Mr. Miller, what you might have seen, it isn't yours to see, and the person you might be hiding isn't yours to protect. This is a matter of national security. Do you understand what that means?" Ben felt a cold knot in his stomach. "I understand that I didn't see anything, and I don't know anyone." Agent Dale held his gaze for a long moment. Then he gave a small nod. He took a business card from his pocket. It was plain white with just a phone number. "If that changes, you call this number, night or day." He placed the card on the porch railing. "Have a good day, Mr. Miller." Ben watched the black car drive away until the dust settled. He waited a full 5 minutes. Then he walked to the cellar. He opened the door. Chato was sitting in the shadows, the blanket around his shoulders. He looked up, his eyes full of questions. "A government man," Ben said, handing him a sandwich and an apple. "Asking about the lights, asking about you." Chato's shoulders slumped. "I am sorry. I have brought trouble to your home." "Forget that," Ben said, sitting on the dirt floor across from him. "Talk. What is that stone? And why did the sky—" "Answer." Chato took the smooth, dark stone from his pocket. He held it in his palm. "It is very old. My grandmother gave it to me. She said it was a key." "A key to what?" "I do not know for sure. To a place, to a memory. She said it holds a voice for the old ones, for the ones who slept in the mountains before our people." He ran his thumb over the stone. The word, Mongolian. It is not just a name, it is a call for help, or for hello. My grandmother said you only say it if you are lost, or if there is great danger. Ben stared at the simple rock. I don't believe in magic rocks. I did not either, Chato said softly. Not really. I thought it was a story. A beautiful story. Then, 2 days ago, men came to my grandmother's house. They had guns. They asked about a stone map. They were not from the government. They were hungry men. I took the stone and I ran. I was scared. Last night when you found me, I was more lost than I have ever been. So I said the word. I called for help. He looked up at Ben. And then the lights came. So those lights, that was your help? Ben asked. I think it was an answer, like someone heard the phone ring. Chato's face was pale. But the men who came to my house, they think it is a map to a thing, a cave of gold. They will not stop. And now the government is here. They want it too, but for a different reason. Ben was quiet. He thought of Agent Dale's cold eyes. He thought of the hungry men with guns. He looked at this scared young man holding a rock. What do you want to do? Ben asked. Chato closed his fingers around the stone. I must go. I must take the stone away from here, from your home, to keep my family safe, to keep you safe. Where will you go? Into the mountains, the Mogollon Rim. The stories say that is where the call comes from. Maybe I can find a place to hide it. Or maybe... He did not finish. He did not know. Ben stood up. The cellar felt too small. You can't go now. That agent is probably watching the roads. He let out a long breath. It was a breath of surrender. You stay down here until dark. Then we'll figure out what comes next. He closed the cellar door, leaving Chato in the cool, dark silence. Above him, the Arizona sky was a bright, empty blue. It gave no answers at all. The afternoon was quiet, but the quiet felt wrong. Ben finished mending a section of fence, his hands working on their own. His mind was in the cellar, with the stone, and with the too empty sky. A different truck came up the drive. It was an old Ford, dusty and loud. It did not drive like Agent Dale's car. It drove like it owned the place. It stopped in front of the barn and 2 men got out. The first man was tall. He wore a clean, expensive-looking jacket. He smiled, but it was a smile that made Ben think of a rattlesnake. The second man was bigger, with thick arms and a face that seemed permanently set in a scowl. They both looked around the ranch like they were checking the price of everything. Ben put down his hammer and walked toward them. Can I help you? The tall man's smile widened. Ben Miller? I'm Jeb Klein. This is my brother Levi. We heard you might have some information for us. I don't know you, Ben said, stopping a few feet away. No, you don't. But we know a few things, Jeb said. He took a step closer. His eyes were a pale, sharp blue. We know there was a light show last night. Real strange stuff. We also know an Apache kid is running around these parts. He's got something that doesn't belong to him. Levi, the big brother, cracked his knuckles. He didn't speak. I don't know anything about that, Ben said, his voice low. See, we think you do, Jeb said, his smile fading. We're historians, treasure hunters, you could say. That boy has a family relic, a little stone. It's a historical artifact. It points the way to a lost cave, a cave with a lot of history, and a lot of gold. I'm a rancher, Ben said. I don't care about caves or gold. Jeb laughed, a short, harsh sound. Everyone cares about gold, Mr. Miller. Here's the thing. That stone is a map, but it's useless without the key, and the key is the boy. He knows the old words. He knows how to read it. He leaned in. You give us the boy. We get the stone. We all go our separate ways. You never see us again. I told you, Ben said, his jaw tight. I don't have any boy. The air changed. Jeb's friendly act vanished. His face went cold. Let's look then. He nodded at Levi. The big man started walking toward the barn. Ben moved to block him. This is my property. You get off it. Levi stopped. He looked at Ben like he was a piece of furniture in his way. He shoved Ben hard. Ben stumbled back, catching himself on the fence post. Search it, Jeb said, his voice calm. Levi walked into the barn. Ben could hear him inside, throwing things over. A bucket clattered. Daisy the mare whinnied in alarm. Ben took a step toward the barn, but Jeb moved in front of him. Just stand right there, old man, Jeb said. His voice was quiet and dangerous. This doesn't have to get worse. From inside the barn, the sounds of destruction continued. Ben's hands clenched into fists. He thought of the rifle in his house. It was too far away. After a few minutes, Levi came out. He had a pitchfork in his hand. He had ripped open a bale of hay. He shook his head at Jeb. Nothing in there, just junk and a scared horse. Jeb turned his cold eyes back to Ben. Where is he, Miller? There's no one here, Ben said, meeting his stare. Jeb looked toward the house, then at the small cellar door set into the hill. Ben's heart hammered against his ribs. Jeb's eyes lingered on the cellar for a second too long. Then he looked back at Ben. Okay, Jeb said softly. He walked back to his truck. Levi followed, tossing the pitchfork into the dirt. Jeb opened the truck door. He looked at Ben one last time. We'll be back, and we won't be asking nice. Think about it, Miller. That boy isn't your family. That stone isn't your problem. You hand them over, and your peaceful life stays peaceful. You don't, and we'll burn this quiet little ranch to the ground to find what we want. The truck started with a roar. It kicked up dust and gravel as it spun around and sped back down the drive. Ben stood alone in the sudden quiet. The barn door hung open. Inside, he could see the mess Levi had made. He walked to the cellar door. He did not open it. He just put a hand on the old, warm wood. He could still hear Jeb Klein's words. Asterisk. You hand them over, and your peaceful life stays peaceful. That was the choice. It was a simple choice. Give up the stranger in the cellar. Go back to fixing fences. Forget the lights. Forget the stone. Ben looked at his ranch, the quiet land, the red rocks in the distance, the life he had built with Sarah, the life he had left. He knew what the peaceful choice was, but as he looked at the scared face of his horse sticking out of the barn and the dust still settling from the Klein brothers' truck, he knew a different truth. The peaceful life was already gone. It had left with the silent colored lights. Ben waited until the sun was gone and the sky was a deep purple. He carried 2 canvas bags to the cellar door. He opened it. Chato was waiting, his few things already bundled. He looked up, his face tense. We're leaving, Ben said. His voice was firm. It was not a question. Chato stood up. You are coming with me? Those men will be back. The government man is watching. You won't make it 10 miles on your own. Ben handed him one of the bags. Food, water, a blanket, a knife. Chato took the bag. He was quiet for a moment. This is not your fight. It's on my land, Ben said. That makes it my fight. Now come on. We go before the moon is too bright. They moved quickly and quietly. Ben led Chato to the old metal shed behind the barn. Inside was his camping gear and an old green Jeep. We take this, Ben said. It's rough, but it can go places their truck can't. Where are we going? Chato asked, placing his bag in the back. Ben turned to him. You tell me. You have the stone, and you know the stories. Where do we go? Chato pulled the smooth rock from his pocket. He held it in the dim light from the open door. The stories say the voice in the stone comes from the high places, the rim, the deep canyons where the pines are thick. My grandmother said to follow the raven and the red rock that bleeds. Ben nodded. He knew that country. The Mongolian Rim was a vast, broken wilderness of cliffs and forests. It was a place to get lost. Okay, we head for the rim. We find a place to hide for a while. Figure out what to do next. They loaded the Jeep with fuel cans, more water, and a tarp. Ben wrote a short note for Miguel and left it on the kitchen table. It said he was checking fences in the high country and would be gone a few days. It was a weak story, but it was all he had. Just before they climbed in, Chato stopped him. Ben. Ben turned. Thank you, Chato said. The words were simple, but his eyes were serious. Ben just gave a short nod. Don't thank me yet. Get in. The Jeep's engine sounded too loud in the silent night. Ben drove without headlights, using his memory of the land to navigate the dirt tracks behind his property. They bounced over rocks and through dry washes, moving away from the main road. After an hour of slow, jarring travel, Ben switched on the headlights. They were on a rough Forest Service road, climbing into the foothills. The air grew cooler. Can I see the stone again? Ben asked. Chato handed it to him. Ben held it as he drove. It was just a rock, smooth and heavy. It felt warm, not cold. It does not look like a map, Ben said. The map is not on it, Chato said. The map is in the stories. The stone is the reminder. It holds the memory of the place. When we get closer, I will know. You'll know? Ben asked, skeptical. I will feel it, Chato said. He did not sound completely sure. They drove in silence for a while. The trees grew thicker around them. These men who are after you, Ben said. The Klein brothers, they think it's gold. They are wrong, Chato said. His voice was hard. It is not a thing for taking. It is a place for knowing. But they will not listen. They only see what they want to see. And the government man? Ben asked. Chato looked out at the dark trees. He sees something else. He sees a secret. He wants to put it in a box. Both are dangerous. Ben handed the stone back. He felt a tiredness that was more than lack of sleep. He was leaving everything he knew for a rock and a story. He thought of his quiet house, growing smaller behind them in the dark. A soft green glow pulsed above the trees to the east. It was there for a second, then gone. Chato saw it too. He gripped the stone tighter. They are still there, he whispered. The lights? Yes, they are following. Or, they are waiting. Ben tightened his hands on the steering wheel. There was no going back now. The empty road ahead was the only direction left. The Jeep's headlights cut a narrow tunnel through the tall pines. The road had turned from dirt to rough rock, climbing higher into the cool darkness. Ben drove with his whole body tense, listening to every rattle of the old vehicle. Chato sat with the stone in his hand, staring out the window at the black forest. We should stop soon. Find a place away from this road. We need more distance, Ben said. The lights know where we are, Chato said quietly. The road does not matter to them. As if his words were a signal, a silent blue-white glow illuminated the trees to their left. It was not a beam. It was a soft pulse that lit up the whole forest for a second, then vanished. Ben's knuckles were white on the wheel. He said nothing. A half-mile later, he turned off onto an overgrown track that was little more than a deer path. He drove until the Jeep was swallowed by thick brush, then killed the engine. The silence was total. Then, an owl called somewhere far away. We sleep here, Ben said. We walk at first light. 30 miles back, in a small motel room, Agent Dale watched a laptop screen. A map of the Mogollon Rim was displayed. A small, blinking dot moved slowly on a Forest Service road, then stopped. A younger man in a polo shirt sat at the table. Signal stopped, sir. Could be they're camping for the night. Dale leaned closer. It's the older one's phone, Miller. He probably doesn't even know it's on. He tapped the screen where the dot had vanished. They're heading into the deep wilderness. They're not just hiding, they're going somewhere specific. What do you want to do? The younger man asked. We follow, at a distance. I want to see where they lead us. Dale's eyes were fixed on the map. The event the other night was a concentrated energy discharge. Unprecedented. That stone the Apache boy has is a focus. It's not a treasure map. It's a beacon. And they are leading us right to the source. In a diner in the town of Pine Creek, Jeb Klein wiped egg from his plate with a piece of toast. Levi sat across from him, shoveling food into his mouth. A waitress refilled their coffee. You boys heading into the rim? Lots of folks been talking about those lights. Jeb gave her his salesman's smile. Just doing some hiking, enjoying the scenery. When she walked away, his smile disappeared. He leaned toward Levi, his voice low. The old man's truck was seen heading up the fire road near Miller's place. They're running. Levi grunted. Good. In the city there are too many eyes. In the woods. He didn't finish. Exactly, Jeb said. He pulled out a worn map, tracing a line with his finger. All the old tales point to the canyons along the rim. If the boy can read that rock, that's where he'll go. We find them, we get the key. Then we find our prize. He crumpled the map in his fist. No more chasing. We end this tomorrow. The forest was cold and damp when Ben woke. A gray dawn light filtered through the pine needles. Chato was already awake, sitting with his back against a tree, holding the stone. It feels different, Chato said as Ben sat up. Warmer. Not from my hand, from inside. Ben chewed on a piece of jerky. Which way? Chato stood. He closed his eyes for a moment, turning slowly. He stopped, facing east, where the land fell away into a series of deep canyons. He opened his eyes. This way. The stories speak of a canyon that drinks the morning sun, a place where the rock is the color of old blood. That could be 100 places, Ben said, packing his bag. Yes, Chato agreed, but only one will make the stone sing. They shouldered their packs and left the jeep hidden in the brush. They began to hike, leaving the road behind. The only sounds were their footsteps and the wind in the high branches. Above them, hidden by the thick canopy, something silent and bright moved through the clear morning sky, tracking their path below. The ground was steep and covered with loose stones. Ben walked carefully, his breathing heavy. Chato moved ahead with an easier grace, scanning the ground and the trees. After a long climb, they stopped by a small stream to fill their water bottles. The stone in Chato's hand gave off a faint, steady warmth. "Your family," Ben said, sitting on a log, "on the reservation. Are they safe?" Chato looked south, the direction of his home. "I hope so. The men who came, they wanted the stone. They did not find it. I think they will not bother my grandmother again, but I cannot know for sure." "Must be hard," Ben said. "Being away, not knowing." "Yes," Chato said. He sat down too. "Your family? You have a son? A daughter?" Ben shook his head. He picked up a pine cone, turning it in his hands. "It was just me and Sarah, my wife. She passed. 5 years now." "I'm sorry," Chato said. "Me too." Ben was quiet for a minute. "She would have liked you. She was always bringing in strays, hurt birds, lost dogs." He almost smiled. "She would have made you a whole meal, asked you 100 questions." Chato nodded. "You live alone since then?" "Just me and the ranch, and Miguel, my helper. It's a quiet life, or it was." Ben tossed the pine cone into the stream. They watched it float away. "You left that life for me," Chato said. It wasn't a question. It was a fact he was trying to understand. "I left that life because it was already gone," Ben said. "The moment those men stepped on my land, it was gone. This," he said, gesturing to the wild forest around them, "this is just what's left." They walked again. After a while, Chato pointed to a pattern of 3 small rocks stacked beside the trail. "Do you see that?" Ben looked. "Just rocks." "It is a sign, an old sign. My people used them. It says water is near, and to be careful because the path is narrow ahead." Chato looked at Ben. "You see the land as a rancher, where the grass is, where the water runs. I see it as my grandmother taught me. The stories are in the stones and the trees." "Show me," Ben said. As they walked, Chato showed him more. A broken branch pointed a certain way, a type of moss that grew on the north side of the trees. Ben listened. He pointed out things too, the track of a deer, recent, the way the birds fell silent, which could mean something was moving nearby. That night, they made a small hidden camp in a grove of aspens. They did not light a fire. They ate cold beans from a can. "The stone is warmer now," Chato said, holding it in his palm between them. "Which way tomorrow?" Ben asked. "East still, down into the lower canyons. The feeling is stronger." Chato put the stone away. He looked at Ben in the near darkness. "You do not have to come all the way. You helped me get away. That is enough." Ben was quiet. He thought about his quiet house, his fences, his empty bed. "Sarah would have come all the way," he said finally. His voice was rough. "She wouldn't have left a thing half done. I guess I'm trying to be more like her." Chato did not say anything. He just gave a slow nod. High above, through the quivering leaves of the aspen trees, a single point of light moved. It did not pulse or glow. It just watched, a silent, steady star that was not a star at all. Both men saw it. Neither one mentioned it. They pulled their blankets tighter and tried to sleep. The first light of dawn was a pale gray. Ben and Chato packed their few things in silence. The air was cold and still. Chato held the stone tight in his hand. "It is hot now," Chato said, his voice low with wonder. "Not warm, hot." "Which way?" Ben asked, shouldering his pack. Chato did not need to think. He pointed east, toward where the land fell away into a deep, unseen cut in the earth. "There, it is pulling." They walked for hours. The pine forest began to thin. The ground became rockier, scattered with red stones. The sound of their footsteps changed from soft earth to hard rock. Then, the trees stopped altogether. They stood at the edge of a great cliff. Below them was a canyon. It was not like the wide, famous canyons. This one was narrow and deep, like a crack made by a giant axe. The walls were a deep, layered red, the color of dried blood. At the very bottom, a trickle of water caught the sun. "This is the place," Chato whispered. He held out the stone. It seemed to hum in his hand. "How do we get down?" Ben asked, looking at the sheer drop. Chato moved along the cliff edge. He stopped at a place where ancient rockfall had created a steep, dangerous slope of broken boulders. It was a way down, but just barely. "Here," Chato said. The climb down was slow and hard. They used their hands as much as their feet. Loose stones skittered away into the void below. Ben's muscles ached, but he did not stop. Finally, they jumped the last few feet onto the sandy floor of the canyon. It was a different world. The air was cool and smelled of wet stone. The only sound was the gentle drip of water somewhere. The high walls let in a narrow strip of blue sky far above. Chato walked forward, drawn by something. Ben followed. They rounded a bend in the canyon. There, the walls opened into a small, circular chamber. The stone floor was smooth, as if washed by water for 1,000 years. In the center was a flat, dark rock, like a table. Chato walked to the center. He placed his hand on the flat rock. He closed his eyes. "This is the place from the stories," Chato said. His voice echoed softly. "This is not a cave of gold. It is a door." Ben looked around. He saw only rock and sky. "A door to where?" "I do not know," Chato admitted, opening his eyes. "My grandmother said some doors are not for walking through. They are for listening, for waiting." He looked up at the narrow strip of sky. "This is a place between places." As he spoke, the strip of sky began to change. The deep blue faded. A soft greenish light began to glow. Then another light, a silent pulse of blue. They were the same lights from the ranch, but here, they were not moving. They were gathering. Dozens of them. They filled the narrow opening of sky above the canyon, glowing brighter and brighter until the red rock walls were bathed in their strange color. Ben felt a deep fear, cold in his stomach. "Chato, what is happening?" "They are here," Chato said, staring up. "They have come to the door." For a moment, there was only the hum of the stone and the silent, brilliant light from above. It felt like a held breath. Then, a new sound cut through the silence, the sharp clatter of a stone falling from the canyon rim above. Ben and Chato turned, looking up at the slope they had climbed down. Two figures stood there, silhouetted against the glowing sky. They were looking down into the canyon. One of them raised a hand and pointed directly at them. It was Jeb and Levi Klein. They had found the door. Jeb Klein's voice echoed down the canyon walls, loud and sure. "Well, look at this. A private party." He and Levi began to climb down the steep slope of rocks. They were not careful. They kicked loose stones that tumbled into the canyon floor. They moved fast, like men who were done with chasing. Ben stepped in front of Chato. His heart hammered against his ribs. Jeb and Levi jumped the last few feet down. They stood facing Ben and Chato. Both brothers were breathing hard, but their eyes were sharp. Levi held a pistol loose in his hand. Jeb's hands were empty, but his smile was a weapon. "You led us on quite a hike, old man," Jeb said, his eyes sliding past Ben to Chato. "But all good trails end, and this one ends right here." He held out his hand, palm up. "The stone and the boy. We're done asking." "There's nothing here for you," Ben said, his voice steady. "No gold, just rock." Jeb's smile turned cold. "I'll be the judge of that. The stone is the map. The boy is the guide. We have what we need now." He nodded to Levi. "Get it." Levi took a step forward, the pistol pointing at the ground. Ben did not move. "Get out of the way, Miller," Levi grunted. "No," Ben said. Levi moved fast. He swung the pistol, not to shoot, but to hit. Ben raised his arm to block it. The impact was solid and painful. Ben grabbed Levi's wrist with both hands, trying to control the gun. They struggled, grunting, feet scraping on the stone floor. "Chato, run!" Ben shouted, but there was nowhere to run. The canyon walls surrounded them. Jeb ignored the fight. He walked straight toward Chato. His eyes were fixed on the young man's closed hand. "Give it to me, boy. This doesn't have to hurt." Chato backed up until he hit the smooth, flat rock in the center of the chamber. He shook his head. With a sudden burst of strength, Jeb lunged. He grabbed Chato's arm and twisted. Chato cried out in pain, his fingers opening. The smooth, dark stone fell onto the flat rock with a solid asterisk clack asterisk. Jeb snatched it up. He held it high, a look of triumph on his face. He looked at the stone, then up at the gathering lights that swirled like silent storm clouds in the strip of sky above. "See that, Levi?" Jeb yelled, his voice full of wild excitement. "We have the key." Ben, still grappling with Levi, saw it happen. "No!" he roared. Jeb held the stone out toward the glowing sky. He shouted the word, not as a whisper, but as a command. "Mogollon, you hear me? I came for what's mine. Show me the gold." For a second, nothing happened. The lights continued to swirl. Then, everything changed. The silent lights above stopped moving. They seemed to focus, to gather into a single, searing point of light directly above Jeb. The light did not look like light anymore. It looked solid. It pulsed once, a deep, silent thump that Ben felt in his chest. Then it shot down. It was not a beam. It was a wave of pure, silent force. It hit Jeb Klein like a hammer made of air. He did not make a sound. The force lifted him off his feet and threw him backward. He crashed into the canyon wall and slid to the ground. The stone flew from his hand. It hit the flat rock again, but this time it did not clack. It cracked with a sound like ice breaking. Then it shattered into a dozen pieces. The force wave rippled out, knocking Ben and Levi apart. Ben fell to his hands and knees. Levi dropped his gun, his face blank with shock. In the sudden, terrible silence, a new sound began. A deep hum, so low it was more a feeling than a noise. It came from the canyon walls themselves. The ground under Ben's hands began to tremble. Small red rocks danced and skittered across the stone floor. From the canyon entrance, a new voice yelled, full of panic. "Stop! Everyone stop!" Agent Dale ran into the chamber, a radio in his hand. He was not looking at the men on the ground. He was staring, horrified, at the sky above. The swirling lights were gone. In their place, the very fabric of the sky over the canyon was stretching. It was tearing open like dark paper, revealing a swirling, empty blackness behind it. Dale brought the radio to his mouth, his voice shaking. "The door is opening. The signal. We were wrong. We got the math all wrong." Above them, the tear in the world grew wider. And from that deep black hole, new lights began to emerge. They slid out slowly. These lights did not pulse or glow with color. They were a cold, pale white. And as they moved into the canyon air, they did not feel like lights anymore. They felt like eyes, and they were looking down. The deep hum from the rocks grew louder. The ground shook in a steady rhythm. Small stones bounced on the ground like popcorn in a pan. Ben pushed himself up to his knees. His ears felt full of pressure. He looked up. The tear in the sky was not made of light. It was a hole of perfect, swirling black. It was as wide as the canyon now. The cold, white lights drifted down from it like falling snow, but they did not land. They hung in the air, moving slowly, turning. Each one felt like a stare. Chato scrambled over to him. His face was pale. "The stories were wrong," he said, his voice tight with fear. "All wrong." "What is it?" Ben yelled over the hum. "It is not a spirit. It is not a guardian." Chato's eyes were wide, fixed on the black hole. "Mogollon is not a name. It is a signal, like a shout into a canyon. We just shouted, and something, far away, heard us." Near the canyon wall, Jeb Klein groaned. He tried to move, but his body would not obey. Levi crawled toward his brother, his tough face now slack with confusion and fear. Jeb, get up," Levi shouted, shaking his brother's shoulder. Jeb did not answer. Agent Dale stood frozen in the middle of the chamber. He had dropped his radio. He was not an agent now. He was just a man, looking at the end of everything he understood. He turned in a slow circle, watching the white lights drift between the red rock walls. "No," he said, but the word was swallowed by the hum. "This isn't contact. This is an incursion." He looked at Ben and Chato, his professional mask gone, replaced by raw terror. "We thought it was a phenomenon to study. We thought we were the hunters. We're not. We're the ones being found." One of the white lights drifted closer to them. It made no sound. It was a sphere of cool light, about the size of a basketball. It stopped a few feet away. It did not have eyes, but Ben felt it examining him. Seeing him, the feeling was cold and deep, like being known by something that did not care if you lived or died. Chato took a step back. The light moved, keeping its distance. It was hurting them. "It's pushing us toward the center," Chato said. Ben looked. The other lights were doing the same, gently floating in a way that pushed all of them, Ben, Chato, Dale, even the Klein brothers, toward the flat rock in the middle where the stone had shattered. The pieces of the ancient stone were gone, not broken, vanished. Only a fine black dust remained on the rock. "The door is open," Dale said, his voice a hollow whisper. The key broke the lock. It didn't close it. It started the engine. Above them, the black hole pulsed. A new shape began to form in its center. It was not a light. It was a darker shadow within the black. It was slowly taking form, reaching down, stretching toward their world like a long, slow finger made of nothing. Levi Klein saw it. He forgot his brother. He forgot the gold. He made a small, scared sound like a child and covered his head with his arms. Ben grabbed Chato's arm. He looked at Agent Dale. The three men stood together, back to back, surrounded by the watching lights. Their fight was over. The race for the stone, the secrets, the gold, it was all meaningless dust now. They all looked up at the shaping darkness reaching down from the torn sky. They had only one thought left, the same thought. They had opened this door. They had to find a way to close it. Before the finger finished reaching, before it touched the ground, the dark shape in the sky stopped moving. It hung there, a silent tear in the world. The white lights below it kept their slow, watching circles. Agent Dale was the first to speak. His voice was a dry scrape. "We have to get out of this canyon, now." Ben did not take his eyes off the shape. "Why? What is that thing?" "I don't know," Dale said. "But my job was to watch the lights, to learn about them. This is not watching anymore. This is a doorway, and something is on the other side. We need to move before it finishes coming through." Chato pointed to the flat rock where the stone had shattered. "The key is broken. We cannot close the door with it." "Then we find another way," Ben said. The practical words felt strange in his mouth. "We can't do anything standing here." Levi Klein was crying softly next to his unconscious brother. He looked up, his face wet and lost. "You can't leave us here." Agent Dale looked at the two brothers with empty eyes. "You did this. You shouted the call. You broke the key." "We didn't know," Levi wailed. A low sound came from the tear above. It was not the hum of the rocks. It was a new sound, a deep vibration that made their teeth ache. The dark shape began to stretch again, reaching a little further down. "Move," Ben shouted. He grabbed Chato's arm and started pulling him toward the canyon's only exit, the way they had come in. Agent Dale was right behind them. Levi screamed after them, but the sound was lost in the new, aching vibration. They ran back down the narrow canyon floor. The watching white lights drifted aside to let them pass, then floated after them, following. It was like being herded by silent, glowing sheepdogs. When they reached the steep slope of rocks leading up out of the canyon, Ben stopped. He looked back. The dark shape had grown. It was no longer just a finger. It was becoming a pillar, a column of swirling blackness connecting the tear in the sky to the floor of the canyon chamber. The red rocks around it were starting to lose their color, fading to a dull gray where the darkness touched them. "It is not just coming through," Chato said, his breath coming in gasps. "It is changing the place, making it part of the other side." Agent Dale stared, his professional mind trying and failing to process it. "It's a bridge. They're building a bridgehead." "We need to tell someone," Ben said. "Who?" Dale asked, a bitter laugh in his voice. "The army? What will they shoot at? The sky? My department. We are the ones who are supposed to know, and we know nothing." The vibration in the air grew stronger. A few small stones broke loose from the canyon wall high above them and rained down. "We cannot stay here," Chato said. "The canyon is becoming unstable. The door is making the land sick." Ben looked at the two men beside him, a rancher, an Apache youth, a government agent. Their fight was a small, forgotten thing. "Where do we go?" Ben asked. Chato looked up at the rim of the canyon, away from the growing darkness. "Away from here, to high ground, to a place where we can see and think." Agent Dale nodded slowly. "And find data. We need to understand what that thing is, if it has a weakness." "It answered a call," Ben said, starting to climb. "Maybe we need to find a way to hang up the phone." They climbed the rocks, helping each other up the steep parts. Below them, in the chamber, the pillar of darkness grew thicker. The white lights swarmed around it like bees around a black hive. They did not look back again. They reached the top of the rim and ran into the pine trees. The normal sun felt wrong on their skin. The quiet forest felt like a dream. They stopped 100 yards into the trees, leaning against the rough bark, breathing hard. The hum was fainter here, but it was still in the air, in the ground. Ben looked at Shadow, then at Dale. What now? None of them had an answer. They only knew they had to find one, and they had to find it fast.